On this episode of ResiWeek, my Lutron gets an overhaul, planning for failures, and the Echo connects with cameras and doorbells. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek, episode 141, Speed Over Service.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Harman International.
Welcome to ResiWeek. This is your weekly wrap-up of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv, and today I'm pleased to be joined by one of my longtime friends, Andre Lalonde. He is an industry expert. He and I go way back. How you doing, my friend?
Doing good, my friend. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic. And we also have Tony Savoina. I totally screwed that up after we just went through this and I screwed it up again. If you don't know Tony, he is the content director of Residential Systems. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for being here. Let's kick this right off with a story that comes to us from Residential Systems. Lutron overhauls its My Lutron suite of web-based tools. If you are a Lutron dealer, this should make sense to you. But what they are doing, this was announced just the other day, they are overhauling, revamping, updating their web portal for dealers. So this is currently built on 4 pillars. It gives you my business, my projects, my orders, and my service. It gives you all the information you should need about what your company is doing and how it is working within the Lutron pipeline. Most importantly, the My Business pillar is going to touch on a couple of things, give you near real-time sales performance information, project pipeline and lead tracking, as well as the viewing and redemption of promotions and program benefits. Tony, since this is a ResiSys article, we're going to start with you on this. This is one of those, dare I say, value add things that a lot of the manufacturers are starting to do, whereas previously, especially if you bought through distribution, you never saw any of this information. You never had access to project information or tracking information or knowing where you were as far as selling. But even the distributors are getting into this game. With Lutron upping their My Lutron backend, how does that in the long run help dealers?
I think it's especially for the residential guys who are finding their way into lighting. I think it's a huge help in that it offers them a bunch of tools in areas that they may not be as comfortable as comfortable being in as there are in other places. So it offers them the opportunity to really go get a good look at exactly what the product's offering and what the value is, how they can run it in their own business. And then, of course, on the other side is that there's the monitoring of it, just to make sure everything is, the fact that they could make adjustments without, sending out a truck. It's just, I think it's a huge help for them.
Very good. Andre, you probably know a little bit about the Lutron backend occasionally.
A little bit.
Check it on LinkedIn if you're really curious what I'm alluding to. When you look at this and when integrators look at this, obviously these metrics are supposed to help them run their business, grow their business, etc. At what point does that overshadow the number of places where dealers or integrators or home theater professionals have to go to monitor how their business is running? Hopefully they've got a CMS or something, some sort of accounting software that's telling them where their business is at. Having multiple, manufacturer-based backends, does that cloud the picture? Does that really help them drive their business further? Where is that handoff?
It's an interesting question because I think there's a certain part of every relationship, there's clearly a relationship that's wanting to be held by Lutron and their dealers, right? So they're wanting to make that handshake. They're wanting you to have that ability of working with you hand in hand. It's about the partnership that they've created with the dealer. Matt, yourself, you are a Lutron dealer, right? So that relationship is absolutely key. And that's something that Lutron has always taken pride and really wants to be able to control that experience. Being said, eventually you are going to need some type of funnel or some type of basically larger site where you can basically get all your numbers from a single Otherwise, you could end up using, 20 different apps, because Lutron, the article also mentioned that they're going to be mobilizing this type of My Lutron moving forward. So
Thank God.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll be on an app, and you'll be able to find out right away, and you'll be able to have that touch point, and then you'll have to do it with, Lutron, then you'll have to do it with your TV guy and your mount guy and your remote guy. Next thing you know, it'll be like, all right, it's taking me too long. So yes, there will be the role of an aggregator, somebody be able to pull that in. Dare say, some could say that would be the rep's job. Some would say that could be your salesperson's or your purchasing account person's job. So I think it's going to get things a little bit confusing to start. It's a little bit of the storming, norming, forming, performing type of thing. But at the same time, look, when I was at Lutron, one of the key elements we always wanted to do is have that connection directly with the dealer, right? And being able to, we would go up to our sales guys and say, look, we're coming to the end of the quarter. Do you know where all your sales, where each account is? How do you get them over to the next hurdle? Their programs are very rich, and there's some very big bonuses or some very big add-ons to happen when you hit that next level. And the number of times that I feel the phone calls saying, had I only known, right? If somebody would have just told me, no, now we're putting that power, now Lutron's putting that power back in your hands. So good for them for doing this, and hopefully it'll encourage others to do exactly the same thing.
So you brought up a really good thing, Andre, and this is a question that I always ask, because there are a lot of integrators, a lot of home theater professionals who they interact with their reps all the time, but they don't always have those sit-down roadmap meetings. Mm-hmm. And whether that's because they don't want to, or the rep doesn't do it, or whatever, but there's always that question of, if I'd known, I would have, bought some stock and thrown it in there to help me hit that point. Is that always on the rep to stay on top of that? Is that on the integrator to stay on top of that? Where does that relationship hit?
Takes two to dance, my friend. You have to have both sides willing, right? The dealer has to be wanting to listen in, to be able to have that open conversation, where the roadmap's going, what's going on. A lot of times the dealer, just because of the way their business is, the blinders are going and they're just running at 115 miles an hour. You do have to be able to hit the brakes a little bit. Likewise, from the manufacturers, have to understand that it's their job also. Obviously, they want to increase sales, but ultimately they're interested in your business expanding and your business growing. That's really, because when your business grows, their business grows, right? So they're going to want to try to make it as easy as possible. This app / My Lutron, which is currently on the Lutron website, I think is a really good step in trying to, let's say, offering the peace branch to be able to say, let's go do this together, right? I'm holding up my hand, you hold mine, and let's take this together.
Very good. All right, gentlemen, let's go to our next article. This comes to us from CE Pro. The best 238-word LinkedIn post by an integrator was a plan for failure. This is from Julie Jacobson. There is a integrator, from Austin, Texas, Kyle Griffin from KG Theaters, explaining how his company plans for smart home failures. I won't read the entire thing, but essentially in this quick post that he made, what he said, and I quote, is, as a full-time audio video designer and installers, I try to apply these lessons. I plan for failure. I put in good surge units that can be reset from afar. I label everything, leave slack for service. I try to talk to the client about buying backups of key parts in the electronic world that may not be around for a long time. I teach them how to reset things and when to call or text me. Andre, I'm going to come back to you to start this one off. When we look at this article, one, which I wholeheartedly agree with, it made me think of a saying that I've heard many times, that if you fail to plan, you've planned to fail. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about planning for failure, not to fail. How hard of a conversation is it for integrators who, we always want to sell that perfect picture of, here's your system, we're passing you the remote or the touchscreen or the controller or whatever. We're passing you the keys and everything will work forever. It will be perfect. There will never be a problem. You'll never call me ever. We know that doesn't happen. How hard is it to have that conversation up front of, so when this fails, here's what we do. Let's buy these extra parts for when they die.
I think that's an extremely difficult conversation to have, but at the end of the day, it's a necessary one. It's part of handing over the documentation. It's part of kind of commissioning the system, if you want to call it this way. You know, I'm trying to be proactive. I'm your partner. You've let me into your home. You've let me work with you all these times, right? I want to try to be a very good partner to you and a good, you know, create a really solid relationship. But, you know, even Toyota builds a car that does eventually require a recall or something like that. So the reality is, let's plan for failure. Let's be able to, in case things do go wrong, I want to take you through just some quick steps as to what things could be done, how we could better position this in case things go wrong. I'm not planning that, but I think I'd rather be proactive about this than reactive afterwards. You and I both know, Matt, we've been on that side of the fence, right? Getting that phone call of, oh, well, there's a major recall, or there's, oh, what do you mean the remote's not working and the Super Bowl's on in 13 minutes, right? Like, give me a break, right? They want to be able to have that. It's just part of the assurance. There's so many more solutions out there nowadays with, you know, services like Domotes and whatever else that you can actually go and monitor and you know, from afar and be able to reboot systems and that. I think the industry is seeing that this is just a necessary part of doing business.
Tony, when you read this story, when you hear where he's coming from, where Mr. Griffith is coming from, this is not an uncommon thing, but too often we all only tell the story in the sales part of that conversation with an end user. We very rarely tell that story of when something dies, when something fails, here's how we're going to approach it. How do home technology professionals, how do they get better at telling that side of the story and realizing that it's not a drawback to do it?
I think there's a certain reality that people even come to expect, especially the more high-tech everything gets, that something invariably is going to go down. The remote monitoring is great, and I think that's almost expected now that they can keep an eye on things. But as important as services, I think speed is even more important. So if you're addressing something as simple, and you could tell them, like, you know, if the problem is swapping out a surge suppressor or swapping out a connector somewhere that they could do, and if they keep it on hand, it's likely that they could take care of it themselves in a very quicker than any service person ever could. I think there's an appeal to that there, and you know, easy for me to say. I'm one of those guys with one of those boxes in his garage. It's got every connector from the last 10 years in it, every cable, and it has saved me. It saved me once, like a decade ago, and I remember that, and I have that thing, and that's why I'm not throwing it out. But so I think there is. I don't think it's unrealistic, and I don't think to say that, listen, things will happen. It's going to happen. How you react to it is obviously the difference in service and in difference in how you treat your customers. But I think that, you know, prepping them for that, for the eventuality that will go wrong, here's how we're going to handle that when it does. There's also a level of comfort in there as well, that they know that you expect this. You're not going to be shocked. You're like, oh, we got this. It's all taken care of.
Very good. All right, gentlemen, let's go to our last story of the day. This comes to us from The Verge. Amazon is now letting smart cameras and doorbells talk to Echo devices. More smart home devices can now connect to Echo speakers using Amazon's new API. So what that means is essentially you are now going to be able to have a doorbell event source, a motion sensor, and some other programming interfaces that will allow essentially a smart doorbell to ping and play an announcement over all your Echo devices throughout the home, alerting you to a visitor or transmitting a message. Other things that this will support include devices from Ring, which Amazon acquired, as well as August smart locks and more things to come. Tony, I want to come back to you on this. This has been a really big year for Alexa and Amazon in general. When they start doing things like this that look like a lot of the things that we do, as mine triggered, on a daily basis, how, like we talked about this the other day, whether Amazon was a competitor to us yet or not. But when they're doing this, which is really, I know the control system that we use in-house for my integration firm, we've been doing doorbell integration for quite a while. This is now something where I don't need all those interfaces to do it. And half my clients already have Alexas in the house. How close are we to Amazon products being a true competitor to what we traditionally do as HTTPs?
I think very close. I think that's the gateway. I think people, they let they're into the house. They get an Alexa, they play around with it. The kids ask it questions. Sooner or later, they get a smart light bulb, and it's like, oh my God, I could turn the light out, on and off from this. And then they stretch that a little further, and they keep going. So now, and then Amazon knows this too, obviously, when they bought Ring and Google and Nest, and so I mean, they know that this is, they're trying for it. They're looking to control more of the house and more of the area. I think, when you get to the really higher level systems, and I know that, they work with Alexa, and which is important, but I think that's a whole nother level. And there's a level of service that the integrators provide that you're never going to get out of Amazon unless they change their business drastically. So I think as long as the service is there, and you're willing to work with the Amazon products and include them in bigger and better, bolder systems, then I think that's the competitive edge that the integrators have over the Amazon.
Very good. Andre, when you look at this, is something Tony said I'm going to come back to, but I wanted to ask you this first. Every time they make an announcement, every time they do something, I can't help but draw comparisons to other products and look at it instantly and go, man, that is a serious shot across the bow. Mm-hmm. I can't help but look at, again, every release they do and go, gosh, they are literally coming after everything that we do. Obviously, there's a gap between ultra high-end, CD level things and general consumer off the shelf like Alexa and the suite of Amazon products. But are we to the point where, yes, everything that they're doing is a shot across the bow, they're coming at us? Or is it just that they're expanding their capabilities and hoping that we start following along with them?
Their goal is to go after mainstream customers, which has historically not been the main audience of the CEDIA type of technology home professional, right? For them to be able to get into mainstream, they have to start pulling in certain projects and certain products and solutions that have been done at the upper end of the pyramid of the echelon, and basically start bringing that information down and that type of systems down. So if anything, what they should be doing, the way I view this, is challenging the dealers to be able to step up their game and move higher up the pyramid and move more into either middle market or into that upper echelon market, recognizing that there is a lot of space that is now slowly, that used to be called the middle market, right? And you've heard me use that term multiple times before, where that is now getting larger and larger and larger and becoming a lot more main or mass stream, right? That's what's happening. It's just a natural transition of time. And therefore, for the integrators to not only remain relevant, completely agree, Tony, you got to move yourself up that pyramid. But let's not also forget that there is a significant amount of work in what's called the do-it-for-me business, right? Yes, these are all DIY solutions. Yes, this is stuff that's now starting to come in the mainstream, but it's still way too technically complicated for the average bear. So although the average bear is getting smarter, this is always taking them a step ahead, a step ahead, a step ahead. And by the way, it's getting to a point where people are just going to be like, I don't have the time to do this. I'm just going to pay somebody to do that as well. So go ahead.
No. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, so I think you've got a combination of, there's two models that are now coming to play for the typical technology, dealer. You can either look and move yourself up the stream to start really focusing on those jobs, on the more complicated type jobs where they are utilizing these systems and the capabilities and the solutions that are being offered by high-level programs. But at the same time, don't forget that there's a very much larger group of jobs that are being done that are still requiring your assistance, your attention. If anything, that's a great place to start learning, right? Look at it from a training perspective. Let me sidetrack a little bit, but what a great place if I was becoming an ESC, if I was becoming into this industry. That's a great place for me to learn and for me to understand how these things work. And then you can train me on a Lutron, a Crestron, or a Savant afterwards, right? So it's a great training ground to be able to understand in that work, not having to explain it to me anymore because I get it, And now you can show me the ins and outs of the higher end intricate systems.
So let me ask you both this. Leaning off what Tony said and what you said, Andre, when we start looking at that separation of either moving up a level to get into higher end systems, more complicated systems, if you're an integrator who's worked that, entry level mid market, you're going to get a lot of pushback going into that upper level because it is more challenging, not to mention the clients as a rule are significantly more demanding. When we start looking at, dare I say, moving down to that DIY, do it with me, do it for me level, that can be a hit to the pride, dare I say, of a lot of home theater professionals who think that they're beneath that. How do you encourage integrators to either A, build a division to do that entry level, easier, DIY level product, but more also, how do you differentiate yourself if you're trying to go up? If you're trying to make that step up, it's not something as just showing up and saying, oh yeah, we're going to bid on that $5 million house. Because you, as a rule, will not have access to the right products or the right solutions to be able to obtain that level. How do you separate yourself between those two areas?
I'm going to let Tony answer this one first.
Thank you, but guy. Well, I think the DIY area is I think that it's certainly an offering. It's an easier job, and I think that having those things offered is a good way to keep a shop busy. And I also, like I said, I think it's a gateway. I think if you service some of those, if you aim your marketing right, if you go, some of those people you can work up toward a better system eventually as well, right? When they outgrow the DIY one, right? Or even some of your other services, they're just, they just starting to get an idea of some home automation. They have no idea of some of the AV capabilities or the lighting and shades. There's a whole much more space. So I think that's a worthy investment to look down market and see if there's if you could bring that level up. And then, and make the leap back up. As far as, big on the $5 million houses without a steady, we say, Matt, is that looking to make the leap jump up without having any of those systems done already? Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah,
I think it's probably harder than going the other way.
Yeah, I know my company specifically, we've bid against other integrators who respectfully have no business bidding the jobs that they're bidding. And we've won a lot of those projects and we've lost a lot of those projects because, again, there's multiple of reasons behind that. But as someone who's been in the business, whether you're in residential or commercial, and we do see it on both sides, it doesn't take much to realize when someone's out of their depth. The concern I have as someone who kind of follows the bigger picture opposed to just my own integration firm, you very rarely see that company that's trying to make that step up who's not ready to make that step up. They very rarely realize that they're not there yet. And as a competitor, they don't usually like it when I tell them that.
So let me offer this. We're at the edges or at the beginning of what's called a white glove economy, right? And this is because the products and the prices are all becoming blurred amongst each other, right? The only real way to differentiate is in that last mile, is inside the home. It's your service, it's your brand, it's your name. Ultimately, at the end of the day, that's the person. That's exactly what the person is buying. Yes, they could be a nice fancy projector, but they're trusting you and the safety of their family inside of their home, right? And while you're in there, it's up to you, Mr. Dealer, to be going after and trying to see where else can I help you, Mr. Homeowner, in any shape or form, right? Whether that be a DIY or a high-end system like a, Crestron, Lutron, Control 4, Savant, whatever you want, pick whatever brand, makes no difference. But to me, that's the most important element, right? And if you're going to go after the DIY, then be the damnest best DIYer in the world. And you're going to be helping everybody. And every grandmother in Arkansas and Ontario, Canada are going to love you because you are the person that they trust with trying to bring them up to, introducing them. Meanwhile, if you really want to focus on that upper end, and you believe you got the chops to go after the upper end, right? Well, make sure that you are prepared to go after the upper end, because as Matt's already stated, when you're going after the big boys, you're going to be playing against some people that know their stuff, and they've been doing that for a long, long time. I've seen also too many projects fail because somebody wanted to take the next step up, right, and force their rep or their salesperson to basically move them up on a product line, and it completely failed, right? And then you have to wonder, Mr. Manufacturer, how did you even allow that to happen? Because ultimately, to get access to certain controlled lines, that decision still does reside with the manufacturer, right? So it's got to be that partnership. It goes right back to a question you asked me about 20 minutes ago, right? About that partnership between the dealer and the manufacturer. That's part of having that roadmap discussion. Are you ready for the big leagues? Are you ready? Or are you going to stay at that AAA level a little bit longer so that we can make sure that all the corners are rounded, all the T's are crossed off, and then we get you ready for the big leagues? And let me show you a really good way to make a lot of money, and a really good way to really solidify your reputation more and more and more.
Yeah, I think it definitely is a very hard thing to do. Whether you're making the decision to move down a level to go after some low-hanging fruit, or to make that step up. And it's just a matter of, hopefully you're being cautious about it and paying attention to what's going on around you. All right, gentlemen, that is all the time we have for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us. Tony, if people want to connect with you, learn more about residential systems, where can they do that?
Well, they go to residentialsystems.com, or they can follow me on Twitter, which is @ResiSys, RESISYS.
Beautiful. Andre, thanks again for joining us. If people want to connect with you, follow your musings, where can they do that?
LinkedIn, probably still the best place. Otherwise, I'm also on Twitter at Andre Lalonde.
Excellent. Thank you again. For myself, if you would like to connect with me, you can find me on Twitter at Matt D. Scott, and pretty much every other social platform. But more importantly, please stop by AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of our other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our underwriters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you support them as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek.